What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tuesday, October 31st, Halloween edition of the NBA Lineup Generator Show. I am your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And we are going to walk through the NBA Lineup Generator tool for both DraftKings and FanDuel on tonight's three-game NBA slate. We're going to take a look at how some of the lineups look individually. You can see how they're structured, how they're built from a projection standpoint and ownership standpoint. And we'll take a look at how the individual player exposures are showing up as well. Take a look at some of the guys that were getting more than the field, less than the field. And if you're not familiar with this tool, it is a lineup creator, lineup generator, as the name says. It's going to do a lot of the harder legwork on the back end for you. And then it's going to just deliver to you lineups that are profitable lineups plus EV lineups based on our simulations and everything that goes into building lineups. And then we're just getting the end result and taking a look at those lineups. So we're going to walk through them for DraftKings and FanDuel. We do also have a lot of injury news tonight. So keep in mind, and this will always be the case, but especially tonight, things could look very different by the time you get to lock. Donovan Mitchell's questionable. Karis LeVert is questionable. They both were at shoot-around, but they are both still listed as questionable. Norman Powell is questionable tonight for the Clippers. That's a big piece of news that we're waiting on. Ivica Zubac is questionable. So there are moving parts. The slate could certainly look quite a bit different later on. But starting with DraftKings now, the first option you have here is to choose an ownership setting. You have all lineups, chalky lineups, balanced lineups, contrarian lineups. I prefer just going with all lineups. I don't want to sort of force my way into arbitrarily choosing a lineup type. There's nothing definitely better about chalky lineups, balanced lineups, contrarian lineups. Everything is on a sliding scale. So I prefer just using all lineups. Similarly, I don't personally want to lock anybody because I don't want to arbitrarily make that decision. It's not part of my process. It's not something I recommend. So going to skip that as well. And now we start getting some lineups. So I'm just going to save the first 20 that show up. And then we can take a look at those lineups. If you're using this tool, you can save your 20 lineups. If you get a lineup that you don't like for whatever reason, you can discard it. Once you get your 20 lineups, you can then download the CSV, enter them on DraftKings or FanDuel, whichever site you're playing on. So you can do that. Now, here looking at the first lineup that shows up, we have Jordan Goodwin, Max Strus, Josh Okogie, Julius Randle, Drew Eubanks, Norman Powell, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard. This lineup projects for 248 DraftKings points, 276.5% aggregate ownership. So this is one of the more popular lineups that we created. But again, this is still a lineup that, even factoring in the ownership, we expect to be profitable over the long run, even though it is a lot more popular than pretty much any other lineup that we have. Going through those guys individually, you have 36% ownership to Goodwin, 34 to Strus, 28 to Okogie, 38 to Randle, Drew Eubanks getting 23%. This is a very, very chalky lineup, but it does project very well. So it is still showing up as a good lineup. Here we have one where we're only giving up about 2.5 points in projection, but we're saving a ton in the way of ownership, almost 100 points less in aggregate ownership than in lineup number one. So here we have Jalen Brunson, Strus again, Isaac Okoro only 10% owned, Evan Mobley only 16%, Cole Anthony as a contrarian play off the bench for Orlando at 8%. Much lower owned lineup, but still projects well. So you do like to see lineups like that. Here we have another lineup. We're giving up about 4.5 points now off of that first lineup, but it is still quite a bit lower owned than that first lineup. Brunson at 22% again, 15% owned RJ Barrett, 18.5% owned Paul George, 18% owned Wendell Carter Jr. These guys are all helping to lower the aggregate ownership. Trying to find one that really doesn't have much ownership at all, but we're not really getting those on this particular slate because it is only a 3-game slate. There's not going to be that many super low owned plays. Now looking individually at the player exposures, how they're showing up. Julius Randle, 80% of the lineups, not really surprising. He's projected to be one of the most popular guys on tonight's slate. We have him projected for about 38% ownership on DraftKings, so we're around 2x there. Norman Powell at 4,400 on a shorthanded Clippers team that just traded several players for James Harden. Powell, like I said, is questionable, but assuming he plays, you have a $4,400 player that is likely to play a bunch of minutes. So we're getting to 55%. He's projected for about 50%. Dean Wade is a value option at 50%. He's an interesting one just because you're not really ever going to be confident in him. He's not a great point per minute guy, but the minutes should be there for him. If Karis LeVert or Donovan Mitchell were to miss this game, Wade's playing time looks even better as a result. But he played about 36 minutes last game. He's only 3,600. He's not that popular. So getting to him, he's just showing up as somebody that is very useful in helping to offset ownership in your lineups while still getting lineups that project well. He's projected around 18%. Then you're getting to Donovan Mitchell playing without Darius Garland, assuming that Mitchell plays. Max Strus, again, playing without Darius Garland, so he's going to look a little bit better. Nurkic, Okogie, about 2x the field on Brunson, a little bit under the field on Goodwin, over the field on George. So you can see, and you're going to see this most slates. There are some chalk plays that you're getting a lot of, some that you're not. As far as really popular plays that actually aren't showing up for us very much, I'm a little surprised to not be seeing more Kevin Durant. He's projected for about 40% ownership, second highest on the slate. We're only getting about 20%. A lot of the time, that wouldn't surprise me at all, because when you have that much ownership going to a very expensive player, it's easy for expensive players to kind of disappoint. And if you went balanced, you could be in a good spot. But on a 3-gamer, I am a little surprised, just because Durant does project so well. No Devin Booker, no Bradley Beal. Those raw points can be difficult to make up, but it appears that we're prioritizing getting to Donovan Mitchell and Julius Randle. They're a little bit less expensive. Mitchell about $800 less, Randle $2,500 less. So we're trying to get those points there and then use some more mid-range guys like Nurkic, Brunson, George that maybe the field can't get to if they're getting to Durant. So he's the guy at the top that right now, at least, we would be pretty under the field on. Most of the other popular players were around the field or a little bit higher. Now we're going to switch over to FanDuel. And while we're doing that, if you are interested in using this tool or any of our other NBA products, this is the last day. You have till midnight on October 31st to use promo code TIPOFF, all caps, and get 20% off any NBA package. So if you want to use the lineup generator or any of the other packages, use promo code TIPOFF, TIPOFF, all caps. You have until midnight, October 31st, to get 20% off any of those packages. Now, looking at FanDuel and how things are shaking out over there, we're going to once again just save 20 lineups real quick and then take a look at those. We have in the first lineup, once again, Goodwin, Bones Highland, who should play a big role tonight for the Clippers since they're missing guys, Eric Gordon, Jalen Suggs, RJ Barrett, Karis LeVert, Kevin Durant, Julius Randle, and Evan Mobley. So the lineup does look quite a bit different than what we were seeing in our number one lineup on DraftKings, although it is still a popular lineup. It still projects very well, 278 FanDuel points. This is just a function of different sites give you different pricing. This is illustrative of why it's recommended, if you can, to play more than one site. It's going to allow you to naturally sort of hedge players. Players that are going to look really good on DraftKings often won't look that good on FanDuel and vice versa. So you're just going to start getting to guys where it's like, oh, okay, well, this guy had a really big game. I don't have much on DraftKings, but I have a lot on FanDuel. So it kind of works out that way. Moving down, trying to find some lower owned lineups. Most of these up here at the top are around 270 plus. Want to see if there's anything that we're getting to that's a little bit lower. Here we have 255, 273 point projection. So giving up about 4 points off of that first lineup we looked at. Russell Westbrook, 22% owned. Markelle Fultz, 57% at 5,400. Donovan Mitchell. Devin Vassell, a really interesting play here at 22%. He's $6,800. The Spurs, we know, aren't very good, but there are plenty of opportunities available for Devin Vassell. You're going to just have some very high upside games from him, given the role that he has on that team. Grayson Allen, Josh Okogie, not surprising to be getting to some cheaper Phoenix guys with no Booker and no Beal. Evan Mobley getting minutes at the 5, no Jared Allen, so you see a bump in rebounding percentage for him. He is more productive when he plays without Jared Allen, so he looks pretty good. He's getting ownership at 39%. Wembanyama, 14% owned, getting 14% ownership, showing up for us here as well. And then Mason Plumlee, 4,200. This is a good example of what I was just saying as far as players that maybe are more interesting on one site than another. Plumlee's only projected for 4% ownership on FanDuel. He's not getting much on DraftKings either, but on DraftKings, he's $4,900. So it becomes difficult to even get him to show up in lineups. On FanDuel, he's a little bit less at 4,200. So it becomes a little bit more palatable to say, look, we're probably going to get 48 minutes split between Zubats and Plumlee. We have a pretty favorable price tag here at low ownership. It doesn't take a lot for this to break in a way that's favorable for Plumlee and puts you in a really advantageous situation. So that's a good example, I think, of how you can sort of take advantage of different players on different sites. It's just an easier path to him being a good play on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings today. Now, looking at the individual players, at the top, Markelle Fultz, 75% of the lineups that we selected. He's projected for 57% ownership, highest owned guy on the slate. Similarly, Jordan Goodwin, second highest owned guy on the slate. He's our second highest owned guy. Grayson Allen is the third highest owned guy at 50%. We're getting 50%. So we're not really getting away from these chalk guys at the top too much. Kevin Durant is fourth. We're getting 40% of him. Kawhi Leonard is projected for the 5th most ownership on the slate at 42%. So that looks like the first really popular player that we're not getting a lot of. We're only getting about 15% of him. So like we were saying on DraftKings, where we weren't getting to Durant, here we're not getting to much Kawhi, which, Kawhi's very good. He's a good play. It's not to say he isn't, but this is essentially just showing us that a lot of the other popular players are showing up in our good lineups before Kawhi Leonard is. Evan Mobley projected for 39% ownership. We're getting over the field on him. So of these guys at the top, it's noteworthy that Kawhi's not there. Paolo Banchero is another one that kind of stands out. He's projected for 35% ownership for the field. He is not showing up in our lineups really at all. He's not in any of these 20 lineups, unless I'm just completely not seeing him, but doesn't appear to be there. So that's an interesting one where, we're kind of just giving up on a good play at 7,100 in Banchero, but we're just prioritizing some of these other guys. So that's all I have for you now in this video. Remember to check throughout the day for injury updates. Check out the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock starting at 5:30 on YouTube, and use promo code TIPOFF, TIPOFF, all caps, to get 20% off any of our NBA products up until midnight tonight. Thank you for checking out the video, and good luck with your lineups.